Let me start by welcoming you and acknowledging that we are gathered here today on territory that was part of the Great Dish that was shared by the neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land ceded by the Crown to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on both sides of the Grand River. It's a great pleasure to have you here today for what is going to be a wonderful artist talk by Irene and to have you preview the exhibition Then, Now and Next that will open tomorrow. Normally the introductory welcome would be given by Tom Mennel, our board chair, but Tom uncharacteristically has a conflict tonight. I think he may be along a little bit later, and Megan Whitfield, our vice chair, also had a conflict. I think she may be along a little bit later. But welcome to all of you. And I'd like to do what Tom normally does, which is to thank our funders, the City of Waterloo, the Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council for the Arts, and for our 25th anniversary, also OCAF, the Ontario Cultural Attractions Fund, which has provided funds for the 25th anniversary activity and including support of Then, Now and Next. I would also like to acknowledge board members who are here. Rebecca Short, where are you? Rebecca's here. Peter Hersix, who's new to the board, is here. Shelley Crawford is here with her sister Teddy, all the way from the east side of Toronto. Thank you, Shelley. And I think, am I missing anyone? I hope not. But delighted, of course, to have the board here. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for tonight, if I may. And many of you know all about this, but we are in our 25th anniversary year. 2018 is the entire 25th anniversary celebrating. It'll have a focus in June. But tonight, with Then, Now and Next, that'll open tomorrow, and also Chronicle, the exhibition that's documenting the first 25 years of the gallery that will be at the Visitor Information Center. Those of you who are here tomorrow can have a preview look at it. It's installed, but just because of staffing, won't actually be open to the public till May 5th, I think. But so this from an artistic point of view is really the focus of the 25th anniversary. And many of you have had a look at the exhibition already, and I'm sure you'll agree it's absolutely stunning. So congratulations to Sheila for putting this all together. It's really extraordinary, and we can all be absolutely proud and excited and thrilled by what's in there and Sheila's conceptualization of Then, Now and Next. Prior to the 25th, though it's drifted into that with the support of the City of Waterloo and the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, we've undergone, or just at the tail end of a $1.3 million upgrade in the facilities. So new windows in the Shantz Gallery and the Shop and Tower Gallery, new roof, new HVAC equipment, some new loading dock doors coming. And the thing that'll be most noticeable to you who've been here before, as most of you have, is new lighting throughout the gallery space and throughout the public space here. So we have wonderful LED lighting throughout, and Susan Edgerly was telling me yesterday how wonderful she thought it was and how it made her work jump. So that's really great. And I wanted to say that one thing we've done as part of the 25th anniversary now is to invite all 6 of the exhibiting artists to be with us. Some for the install and some just for this evening for the opening. Hello, Aggie. And I wanted to introduce them because one of the great opportunities tonight in what we've characterized as a director's preview will be a chance for you to meet them, chat with them about their work. You can do that tomorrow as well, but this is just in a slightly more intimate setting. There'll be wine, there's some food, and so I just want to, and I'm going to have to, if I may, just read a little bit about each of them because I haven't memorized all this, so I've met them all now. And I'm going to embarrass them by asking them to first to stand up. Susan, where are you? Susan Edgerly. There is Susan. And when you'll see Susan's work on the great long wall in the Chance Gallery, truly remarkable. And so again, forgive me if I read, and Susan, forgive me if I leave out some stuff because you've done too darn much. And so, as one of Canada's leading glass artists, Susan Edgerly is renowned for her singular and poetic studio practice. Since 1984, sorry about that, dyslexia here. She has been creating large-scale glass and mixed media sculptures and installations which have been exhibited in North America as well as in Europe and Asia. Susan's works are represented in museum collections including the Musée National des Beaux-Arts de Québec, the Montreal Museum of Fine Art, and the Canadian Museum of History, as well as in many prestigious corporate and private collections in Canada and the U.S. Concurrent to her active studio practice, she has been involved in glass education as a teacher at Sheridan College, 85 to 87, and at Espace Vert in Montreal from 88 to 2006, where she also served as pedagogical director from 89 to 90, implementing Quebec's first college-level glass program within the center. And Susan is an elected member of the Royal Canadian Academy of Art, and we're absolutely delighted. And as you might have seen from the release, Susan exhibited here in '93 when it opened, so it's absolutely wonderful to have you here, and the work is astounding, so thank you very much. Then we didn't even find a seat for him. Zachary Logan is at the back. Zachary, wave, thank you. And when you go into the gallery, right straight ahead of you, you will see not only his ceramic work, but also two wonderful chalk pastel on black paper that are right in front of you that are, just told them, they're truly extraordinary. So thank you for that. Zachary is you know what I've done? I've missed it. Anyway, forgive me. Zachary Logan is a Canadian artist based in Regina, Saskatchewan, who works mainly with large-scale drawings, ceramics, and installation practices. Logan evolves a visual language that explores intersections between masculinity, identity, memory, and place. Engaging empirical explorations of landscape, figuration, and overlapping art historic motifs. His work has been exhibited widely in group and solo exhibitions throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, and can be found in public and private collections worldwide, including the National Gallery of Canada, Leslie Loan Museum in New York City, Art Gallery of Ontario, Remy Modern, and Michael Collection of Art. And there's more, but that'll give you a sense of what Zachary has been up to, and we're so delighted that he's here. Now, is Samantha here? Samantha Dickey is not here yet, so I'll maybe save her till the end. She's been working 12 hours days. I figure she's sound asleep somewhere. And when you go in, if you go to the Bierstock Gallery, the round gallery, you will see her work, which is absolutely extraordinary, and have been working like 3 or 4 days with help all day, installing over 1,000 pieces in there. So I'll hope that Samantha arrives before I'm finished here. And then Peter Pounding is here. There's Peter at the back. Peter, welcome. It's really great to have you here. We're thrilled, delighted, and honored to have your work as part of this exhibition. And Peter just flew in from Boston, so we're delighted that there were no snowstorms at either place to prevent him from coming. Since 1970, Peter Pounding has lived and worked as an artist in the hills of southern New Brunswick. While Pounding's award-winning work is shown internationally, it is imbued with qualities distilled from a life lived close to the silent space and seasonal rhythms of his home and of the fields, forests, and shorelines of Canada's east coast. Known as an inveterate experimenter and risk-taker, he works in a wide range of media, often combining glass, cast bronze, stone, ceramics, and steel. In addition, he produces large photographic prints of ephemeral work and is engaged in large public commissions. Peter has been awarded the Governor General's Bronfman Award as well as an honorary doctorate from the University of New Brunswick. So again, it's wonderful to have you here, Peter. And Peter's work you will see immediately as you come in, straight ahead, and then in the Chance Gallery on the right. So now Audie Murray, where's Audie? Oh, she's asleep too. Well, I'll speak about Audie. Audie Murray is a multidisciplinary Métis artist from Saskatchewan, currently learning and creating on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. She has completed a visual arts diploma at Camosun College in 2016 and her Bachelor of Fine Arts at the University of Regina in 2017. She has studied traditional tattoo practices with the Earthline Tattoo Collective in the summer of 2017. Working with themes of contemporary Indigenous culture and ideas of connectivity and duality, she believes that the concept of and energy of her artworks informs their materiality and form. Audie has shown her works at various events and spaces in Canada, including Open Space, the Mackenzie Art Gallery, and the Justina Barnaky Gallery. So I will just say a word more about Samantha Dickey then. Samantha Dickey is a Victoria-based contemporary ceramic artist focused on abstract expressionism and minimalist sculpture within an installation practice. Following a Bachelor of Arts degree from Trent University, she completed a diploma in ceramics from the Kootenai School of the Arts and attended residencies at the Sculpture Factory in Jingsen, I think, China. I was going to ask her to pronounce it, how to pronounce that, but the Banff Centre and Red Deer College in Alberta, as well as the Klondike Institute of Art and Culture in Yukon. She was an invited presenter at the 2017 Canadian Clay Symposium and has been awarded project grants from the Canada Council, BC Arts Council, Alberta Foundation of the Arts, Yukon Arts Fund. Her work is regularly exhibited in public galleries across Western Canada and is currently represented by the Jonathan Bancroft Snell Gallery in London, as well as the Madrona Gallery in Victoria. So when Audie and Samantha come, perhaps at the end of the artist talk, I will reintroduce them. And just to note as well that part of the focus of the 25th anniversary celebrations, now that the exhibitions are open, is happening from the June 21st to 24th right here, and we're honored to have the honorary co-chairs of the 25th anniversary, Ann Roberts and Aggie Bainan, with us tonight. So thank you both for doing that. And there is a 25th anniversary committee that's been meeting for a year, chaired by Tom Mennel. I know it's going to be wonderful, and the staff that are here are working so hard to pull this together. And one of the really great things that Judy Donaldson helped to broker, there's Judy, is that Fusion, the Ontario Clay and Glass Association, which has an annual conference, through Judy's intervention early on, they changed whatever plans they had, and so the Fusion conference will be here starting the night of the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of June, and Peter Pounding and Samantha Dickey are two of the presenters coming to to present at the Fusion conference. So we'll see Peter and Samantha again, which is going to be great. There'll be a reception here on the Friday night. There'll be activities here during the day on Saturday. There's an alumni dinner on the Thursday night across at Knox Presbyterian Church, where one of our board members will premiere Terry O'Neill doing a video. And then on Saturday night, a big dinner for our guests and the Fusion delegates, again at Knox, and with Garth Clark being the featured keynote speaker. So it's a really, really exciting long weekend coming up. So with that, and I've gone on quite long, but I needed to introduce the artists, and I hope you'll be happy to have met them. And Sheila, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. When I was in the early stages of thinking about the current exhibition, I contacted Irene Frolic and asked her if she'd be interested in participating. She sent me a very prompt response and accepted with great enthusiasm. So Irene was, as Bill I think mentioned, was a part of the inaugural exhibition of the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, curated by Alan Elder. And Irene said that the invitation to participate in this show brought her back to those memories of 25 years ago. So that was nice. So having Irene say yes to this exhibition was the grounding first step for me for creating the 25th anniversary exhibition, Then, Now, and Next. I built the show artist by artist, starting with Irene. And so it's very appropriate that she's here tonight to give an artist talk. I've watched Irene's career for over 15 years, and I've been consistently struck by the strength of her work and her sincerity of purpose. Irene Frolic, as many of you know, I'll just read a little bit of her bio. She works in Toronto, where she's been creating glass sculpture for 30 years. She's the past president of the Glass Art Association of Canada and a member of the Royal Canadian Academy of Art. Her work has been exhibited internationally and is found in many public and private collections, including the Montreal Museum of Fine Art, the Museum of Decorative Art in Switzerland, and of course our own collection here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery. So I'm super excited that she's here and super excited to hear her talk. So let's welcome Irene.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. It was a pleasure to have worked with you this week and this gallery in general. It is a dream gallery for a sculptor. And Bill, thank you. Can you hear me?
Get a little closer to this.
Okay. So I don't have much time. I'm going to give you a brief history of my career. My work is very personal, so everything gets blended in with my personal story, and my work is an expression of that. So if you'll hit the lights.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit the lights, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. I don't want to see you,
Let's hit the lights, yeah. It's like our history classes.
Yes, right, don't fall asleep. So, in 1948, which was a long time ago, I came to Canada with my parents, having survived a terrible, the world's worst Grimm's fairy tale possible in the forests of Europe, with witches in the forest that ate children, but luckily we were lucky enough to have survived that. And after 3 years in refugee camp in Austria, we arrived in Canada. No English, I was 7 years old. So I arrived in this strange place, which is sort of the place where I've stayed my whole life, I think, where I'm sort of an observer. I did not know the language. Everything was sort of magical, didn't quite understand how things worked. But I prospered, my family settled down, we all did well. I became a little Canadian girl, and then a Canadian teenager, and then a Canadian person. I had a good education. I went to U of T, Ithaca College, Cornell University, studying literature, and got married to my wonderful husband that's there. Had 3 children, had very interesting jobs, and at the age of 40, about the age of 40, I found myself able to take I had not done any art at all. I had found myself in a position, because my children were all old enough to go to camp, that I could have 3 weeks to myself, and I took an art course at Sheridan College. It was a glass course. And I found myself at that time of my life sort of splitting. I was really burned out from the work I'd been doing past the previous 10 years in a community college working with disadvantaged people. And I couldn't get people to change, and no matter how much I tried, it's very hard to get people to change because you can't get society to change. So I was really burned out from that, and I felt as though I were splitting. So I'm going to show you the 3 pieces I made at that course that I took that summer. There was this one, which I called Koopa, and I had to decide if I was going to stay asleep or go on with my life, because I really felt at the age of 40 that I was at some point where changes had to be made. Even at the very beginning, I was never what you call a clean glass artist. I never became a glass blower. I was always mixing the glass with other stuff and clay and metal and things like that. So these 3 pieces set up my time. This little bowl that I made was a small little thing, a little teacup, made with fused together frit, which is little pieces of crystal, and I had woven a basket. I had originally wanted to get into a basket weaving course, but it was full. And that's why I took on to glass. So I wove this little basket out of copper strips and packed it in with the glass. And what did I find? That the glass, which is supposed to be fragile and breakable, became the strength, and that the metal sort of gave into its softness, and it was the glass that was holding the metal together. So that was another very important thing in my connection with my chosen material. And the third piece, I didn't know I would be giving lectures in years to come. You should never take a picture with your cat, of your work with your cat. It's not very professional. But anyway, that's Poor Mushka. And this was a piece where also this was, my hubcap had fallen off. So I filled it with ice cubes, poured in wax, and did the whole hippie thing. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the wax candles we used to make. Take a milk carton, put ice cubes in, you remember? Yeah, so this became sort of that thing, and filled it with glass. And that taught me patience, and it also taught me a certain kind of go for it feeling of spontaneity, or, your hubcap falls off your car, what are you going to do with it? You do that. So those are 3 very important things in those 3 weeks that I had. And I really I had done no art. I was always very confident of working with my hands, but I felt that I knew all about glass. Just came but then I went back to work at the end of those 3 weeks. And the following September, then it was my birthday, and I asked for no presents, just monies. I bought a little kiln, and then then the following summer, I went to Ontario College of Art, and I was still working. I started working in the glass studio, where I had the pleasure of meeting Alfred Enger, John Robinson, Carl Schantz, and all that group of guys. It was wonderful. So from the beginning, I was never interested in, the clarity of glass and the mouth-blown quality of it, full of air, and the glistening and things like that. The glass that I was interested in was the glass that's in the center of the earth, the magma, that roiling, boiling, sort of moving, sort of glassy kind of thing. I also didn't want to use color. I didn't want to be responsible for choosing a color. Of course, in those days, we didn't have color. That was a long time ago. So I colored my glass using copper powder. So that the color you see on the top came from copper. And I wanted to show the connection between human, psychology and geology, the human body and the earth and the crust of the earth and how we all develop. And I was really I'm not that much older than you guys now, it seems, but in those days, I felt much older than everybody else. So I felt, I took it upon myself to feel, I should not have, because I don't think anyone else felt it, that I was old and maybe I shouldn't be there, and I was covered with this crust of stuff, and with my experiences and, my little hunch and stuff like that. I don't know why I did that, but I did. So these were sort of autobiographical in that way. And I did another piece made up, this was also a very important piece, was made up of 3 things that come from the fire. At the bottom, steel, which I cut, raku-fired clay, and the top, of course, the crown of glass. And I called it My Roots. I had just I was reading a lot about glass history, and there's a book written in the 17th century, the first glass book by Antonio Neri, The Secrets of Venetian and Murano Glass. And it said, the translation that I read, glass is a medium, not of nature, but made wholly of art. Like you can't dig up glass, you have to make it. Made wholly of art, of fires acting on sand, the most common substance on earth. And so, when the final Holocaust comes, all the world and all the people in it will turn to glass. With my background, that really hit me. That hit me right. I just knew, like right into the vein, that I had come to the right material to speak of the kind of things that I was interested in and that I had absorbed when I was a very young child and things like that. So that was that piece. And then I still was continuing working, and then finally I went from summer school to part-time school, and I was already showing. I was still like a night school student. So I made this piece. I called it My Friend Pablo, and I will never do that to a human face again. My mother looked at that and she said, Irene, have some respect for the human face. My mother was a sculptor. She was a wonderful sculptor. So that was the last one I did. But here's My Friend Pablo. I was extremely tired, and I could only imagine that a man who recreated himself, I mean, how many different careers and flames did he erupt during his life? Like every 20 years he'd come up with something new. I thought, how the heck, how can he, if you get one, you're lucky, but this man. So My Friend Pablo, but while I was casting this thing, it was late at night. We were all hiding because we were supposed to be out of the school, and I was pouring the mold, and the mold surround broke, and we had what was known as Plaster Disaster, where all the mold material fell to my feet, and there was plaster everywhere, and I had to clean it up, and we used to use the plaster in the ceramics department, and we would different color plaster, and they would know that it was us, and it was like horrible. And I was cleaning it, and then I had this pain in the side of my head, and I went to the bath, looked into the mirror, and my face had gone dead on one side. This is the truth. I got Bell's palsy. I don't know if any of you ever had it, but I had a really severe case of it, so I still suffer from it. I feel it all the time. So life imitating art. finally I got home and it was diagnosed. I thought I was having a stroke, of course, But anyway, I could not go back to work. I'd been teaching at that community college. I could not go back to work because I had such a severe, I couldn't speak. And I remember lying in bed one night and I said to my husband, with my eye taped shut because it wouldn't close, and I said, Bernie, do I have to go back to work? And he said, no, you don't. And I said, good. So I never went back to work and started full-time at OCA, where I had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. And it turned out that this disrespectful, really pathetic sculpture went to a show at the Indiana State Museum in Indianapolis. I didn't even know how to pack things. I put him into a bucket, and he went in the back of Kevin Lockhouse's truck, who drove it there. We had no idea. And this is true. This has been the story of my life. A man from Switzerland was in Indianapolis because visiting his mother, who was in an old folks' home there. And it turns out he was a very serious glass collector. And he bought that and donated it to the Museum of Decorative Art in Lausanne, Switzerland, where it resides today. And I thought, oh, this is easy. That's good. I wasn't even at the show. I said, yeah. And for me it has been easy because I'm in a lot of museums now. And sometimes I wonder, how did that happen? It must be the horseshoes. But so that was the beginning of Pablo. I don't know where he's at now. So I happily started school, and I have still to this day, if you see like some of the faces there, this theme of the split. The split face, half and half, the cultural split, things like that. I still have that. So I did a number of pieces there. I'll just quickly go through it. And again, at Ontario College of Art, we were not into beauty. We eschewed beauty. Beauty was not something that we were interested, even if we were. So whenever we made a piece of glass, we would cover it with something, and this one was covered with, copper powder and patination. And also, if the mold split, because no one knew how to make a mold, that was even better, because in my mind at least, it makes it much more beautiful. And there's a piece in the gallery, one of the very first pieces I made from this, that our godmother, Anne Roberts, who started this whole dream, won at a raffle, because I had a fundraiser at my studio, and I think it's been donated now to this gallery. But it's also from that very early thing before I had learned other important things. But anyway, so I really loved all the splitting and the breaking and the thing, because to me, that was humanity. Even if something did come out beautiful, and I think I would cover it with powder and then brush it off. But in this one, this is where I finally learned how to achieve that look in the kiln, and not add something later to cover it. I won't go into the details, but it was a matter of coating the inside of the mold with copper powder and glue and things like that, and I was late, and I said, I'm just going for it. I'd never done it before. So this wonderful, I think, man came out. Whoops. Now I work with wax almost exclusively. In those days I worked with clay, and I'd never taken a sculpture course or anything like that, but again, it was a very natural for me. So I would work with clay, and people say that innocent people went into the kiln and experienced people came out. And the heads were always hollow. I scooped out the brains, because all those years of teaching, I could not change anything. So I decided to forget the brain and go for the emotion. And the surface, to me again, the whole geology, and this is what I once flew to Winnipeg, and on my way saw the landscape. I looked down, it looked like one of these surfaces of the skin and the land. And again, accidents of the kiln, and big accidents in the kiln. So I call this one Fire and Ice. It's the poem, the Frost poem. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Whoops. So that's a big flashing for those of you that know. I left it on. I had a series, at that time, I was very lucky to be with a gallery in Toronto called, it was called Neil Faber Gallery at that time, and it was Lisa Wahela was the owner and curator of the gallery, and she let us do whatever we wanted. And in some ways it reminds me of this place because it was open, and you could do big installations or small things, and anything went. And she had a good stable of artists, I think, and we did everything. It was at 80 Spadina. I don't know if any of you know that. That was a really hip and cool place in those days. Somebody's smiling over there. So anyway, I did this series called Thrice Born, where I would take a sculpture and do it, then cover it with sand, and fire it again, and then cover it with sand and fire it again, and then each time more sand would stick to the glass until it became all soft and mossy and devitrifying and changing from glass and going back to the sand from which it came. At least in my mind, not really, but that's what. So. Oh, sorry. And that's sort of what it looks like. So for almost 20 years, I had a studio in downtown Toronto, but now we live in a condo. And so I had to give that one up. No, it's not a condo, it's a rental. But I just did open up a new studio. I can't believe it. Under the railway tracks on DuPont and Davenport. But this was a beautiful, magical place. That's my kitchen door, and that was the other door, and there were always these white plaster footprints going back and forth. That was my new kiln. It's dead now, somewhere in the garbage heap, Alfred. I don't know. That was my hoist. I would go up on the roof, take off, Molds are heavy. It's very hard to get them into mold. Everybody got in the act. This is the kind of glass I used for my early work, and I have some earlier pieces here. So I use plate glass, which has its own qualities. It has iron in it, and it's really amenable to being colored by metals and things like that. I used to get them from a glass factory, from the dumpster, until they caught me one day, standing on top of the dumpster. And he said, lady, come inside. So after that, they always saved it for me. I didn't have to. So that's basically how it is for those of you that you need a blood sacrifice if you don't have a virgin. And this is what they looked like in those days. I would pour them into metal because I was tired of the molds breaking and, falling into the bottom of the kiln. But the metal would oxidize during the firing, and I think that's what caused the colors. If you'll see some of the there's a piece there called Hidden, and you see those colors. That started out as plate glass, and you can get to see, and they're like, if there's any clay people here, it's sort of like a raku thing that happens, but no one's ever been able to explain to me why. So anyway, so you take it out, and it's halfway between a gift and a bomb, and then you sort of demold it. So that was one way. Another way of filling the molds would be, that's my son Adam, my oldest, going to the studio and going right from the tank. This is the Alfred Engerer move. You got to move fast from the glory hole to the tank, to the thing, and then I would have the molds in there and fill them up. And this is how they looked. And I used to do it early in the morning when the glass was still seedy. It had the bubbles. Some people don't like bubbles. I like bubbles. It makes it alive. And I think one of these pieces is also in the collection here, if I'm not mistaken, the one with the braid. Yes, yeah. From Shirley Elford.
Yes.
So this was a show I called The News from Europe, because after the Iron Curtain fell, I one day reading the Globe and Mail, and I look, and there's my hometown, which was in Poland, but now it's in the Ukraine. And people are going in there now, and there's skulls coming out of the ground in the forest. And there was all this consternation, like whose skulls are they, and what, and who did what to whom, and in that charnel house, of a time. So I did this show, which I called The News from Europe, and you came in, and there were these three figures, which are sort of archetypal, many cultural figures, sort of surveying the scene. And they're looking out over this structure that I built, which was a granite plane with these three figures coming out of it like wraiths, unfolding with the binding cloths, unfolding from the bodies and coming up out of the ground. This was at the time Yugoslavia was falling apart, and there was all the killing going on there too, as well as here. And I call it nationalism, tribalism, barbarism. And guess what? That was a long time ago. It's still happening everywhere. And I had these on the top of a very tall tower that I made out of metal, and with the world's smallest Bible underneath, and in it said, if a stranger live amongst you, Leviticus 33 or something. If a stranger lives amongst you, you should love the stranger as yourself and not do them any harm. So I had these two, what I call the white guys, sorry, looking down, and then the stranger underneath. Oops. And then there was a box that I made from the glory hole covers. You don't know what that is, but it's really exciting if you're a glass person. It's where you stick the rod into the glory hole to get the glass, and there's a square cut out of the metal, and it's just oozing and dripping with glass. We got new ones, so I used the old ones and made this, and I call it My Hometown. And in there I made a number of globes. I blew them and covered them with aluminum foil, sort of like skulls or something underneath, and on top of it a little hand in blessing. And that little hand you'll find in the well, the piece, the well out there. That's sort of hiding something from me that I can't quite know what it is. It's still hiding from me. And this piece I made call it DP, people coming. DP were displaced persons, refugees coming to this wonderful country, jumping out of their packing crates and just ready to go. Another show I did at the Koffler Center with my mother, who was an artist, was our personal history. And it was called, we called it Remember, because that's the artist's job, I think, is your REM dreams. You dream of things, and you wake up in the morning and you hold the ember in your hand, and the artist's job is to blow on that and make it into alive again, to remember it. And I think many of us artists work with personal history. So anyway, I did all the drawings. My mother did all the sculpture. This was a huge drawing, maybe 12 feet by 8 feet wide, of my mother from her. The reason I'm still alive is that she lived on false papers, lived on Aryan papers, that she was her first art project at the age of 17 or 18 when I was born. She made all these false documents, so this was one of them with a little stamp there in the corner. Sorry, well, so that overhang, and it was a charcoal drawing with paraffin wax painted over top of it. So you come onto the scene, and there were these sort of normal-looking people. We only used concrete, wood, and paper for this, and because these are the materials of civilization, and that was a crime of civilization, not a crime of nature, but a crime of civilization. So you came in, and then you would go down around the corner, and there were these, what are they called? Those, when you ship material on these pallets, yeah, because these people were disposable. And as you went along, they would disintegrate and disintegrate. And on the wall were a series of drawings of, I got them from, I used to do the clippings from the New York Times. When you got a promotion, you got your picture in the New York Times. So I had a shoebox full of these people, and these what I used for the people that could see, but the mouths were covered with burnt paper, but they did not speak about what was happening. And then in the next room, I was lucky enough, I drew a 12 by 8 foot, 12 by 12 foot painting, charcoal, of my family. One of the last pictures taken just before the war. And my mother used to come into the studio when I was doing it. She says, no, she said, he had blue eyes, you know. He didn't look like that. So I sort of got to know these people. So in that picture, none of them survived the war, except for the little girl in white, who is my mother. And here's another one that I did. I was in a show with Susan again at the Art Gallery of Peterborough. And another one, that's that drawing of that little girl coming out through all those glyphs, through a language she doesn't understand. And in the front is the storyteller, from the heart to the lips, Labyrinth. And on the top were these things I welded together, which reminds me of the crown of thorns, because actually the only real paper that my mother had during the war was I was christened as a Roman Catholic in Ukraine. So that was the only real paper that she had that wasn't forged or something like that. So, and then when we went there to hide, in hiding, long story, but anyway, she went to work in a SS hospital. She figured she might as well go right to the lion's den, and she was like washing floors in the operating room. And she couldn't ever cry because people would wonder why, you know, she's crying. But there was a church on the way home from work, and she went there every day. And I couldn't find the picture. She found the pic. There was a certain one of the Christ statues that had the thorn, and she used to sit in front of it and cry because there were a lot of widows in there crying their eyes out. So I have a link. I have an understanding. And as she said, he was a Jew as well. So that was that one. Now, it's not all like doom and gloom. I've had a great career. I've done a lot of teaching, doing workshops, many of them at Pilchuck. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's a wonderful glass school in Washington State that was started by Dale Chihuly. And here I am with Madame Lebinsky, the queen of cast glass. She and her husband were the best. And always at the end of the session, I would display my students' work. And the white vessel at the front is by Lu Lin. She was in my class. That was the first class. Yeah, so that was wonderful. And then I got to work with the beautiful Billy Morris. That was wonderful too. If you taught there, you got to have the best gaffers, and they would make things for you. And then I got going full-time into school. I'm not going to talk anymore about these. I started to make a series of called Labyrinths because I began to explore what was going on in myself. And these were quite big. And they had to do with desire and dreaming and hope and indigo dream. This was in the first show here, 25 years ago. And this one, Butterfly Woman, who now is in a museum down in the States, but that was also in the first show. That has to do with something I struggle with, and I'm sure every artist, is how to fly. You know, we want to fly. We want our art to lift us. It's autobiographical, and so she's a cross between a sofa and a butterfly, because our wings are so small that it's almost impossible to get off the ground. Maybe once in your life you can fly. That's good. And this is, I'm not good enough. I can't find it right now. Also from a poem, time held me green and dying while I sang in my chains like the sea. And this one, what lips my lips have, and that is in the collection of Miss Susan Edgerly. I was lucky enough to get a pinned piece for my wall in exchange for this. Mm-hmm. And this again is from a poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay, which ends, I know that summer sang in me a little while, that in me sings no more. Maybe. And this one, How to Live in the World. Another one, this is in a museum in Philadelphia, also How to Live in the World. And this was here a number of years ago. It's also a very large drawing. I like to do things in public galleries every once in a while that are more like installations rather than putting stuff on a pedestal and selling it, which can be, it's wonderful, but you know. So this one has to do with the artist, the vulnerability of the artist who brings, you know, something from above through the hands and out through their hands into the world. But, and those are sort of glass shards there, but we're very vulnerable because you can see how the veins are right up at the surface. And then I began to work with wax around the time my grandchildren started getting born. So this one was the first one, my blue sprout and my red sprout. Oh, somewhere along the line I said, I'm not doing any more figurative work. I can't stand to even think about doing it. I'm only going to do that kind of work. But that didn't last very long. Like there's another piece. And then the penny dropped. All those years where I'd been working with the metal in the kiln and the fumes and everything like that, I'm not sure exactly, but I got an autoimmune disease that affected my eyes. It's the same disease that many of the firefighters at 9/11 got, but they got it in their lungs. And I was almost blind. So I had, my 60s were shot. I was basically struggling. They found a good medicine for me, and I'm fine, now. But those were, so I decided, how am I going to help myself, And I decided to go for beauty. I decided forget all that ugly, broken stuff. I'm going to try to make things as beautiful as I can, and have all of them maybe have a halo on them. So this one. Also, just found out just gone into a museum. This is a quote from Virginia Woolf. "Life is a luminous halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end." So that's one. I did a number of these. Beauty's okay, right? It's a lot of hard work.
It was pretty.
Huh?
It was pretty.
Pretty?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty's go all right, I guess. I'm not sure. And here's my ruby, which is there in the other room. The reason I like this one very much, and you may be disappointed when you look at it, because I took this beautiful glass that was so like a ruby glass, and I cooked it a little bit so that the surface is opaque, and you only get a hint of the color if the light comes a certain way. To me, that's probably one of the most successful pieces I ever made, because I think that shows me the subtlety of glass. And I had fun with these. Kasia, you remember? We shared a studio when we were doing these. Yeah. And I felt I was learning to fly again. I'd been sick, I was over it, and I was feeling all good and juicy, learning to fly. Then, this piece is also out there, began to think, what does an artist need? What do I need as an artist? Well, one of the things I have to learn how to do is how to subdue my monkey brain. And, maybe I should meditate, think more, not act and waste my energy, but to think more. So here's my little man that I love, and he's surrounded by monkeys. In there, you'll see the piece in there, having a little meditative moment of floating, which I have never been able to do. And here's my well. That was now it's finished. This is before I finished it. And in it, one of the other thing I need to learn to do is go to my well. Every artist, it's what artists need, or anyone, go to your well. But what I discovered, because I sat on this piece for about 2 or 3 years before this is the first time it's been shown. What I discovered, that's what is in my well, is hidden. I can't, you'll see when you look in. There's a lot of rusty metal and in there, but it's all hidden. And the third thing is to accept all gifts. Even if it's a Trojan horse, and probably your entire culture and city will be destroyed. Accept it. Accept everything that comes, because you can use it somewhere. And finally, the last piece, this also was done here at this wonderful gallery. There was a show that Alfred Engerer and Lisa Wahela were the curators of. And it was a show where it was called the Glass Architecture Project. where they took 12, and John Robinson was in it too, that's right. And they took 12 architects and linked them with 12 glass artists, and I'm not sure what exactly was expected, and they were thinking of, some kind of artwork for for a building. But the architects all went renegade, and they wanted to make art. So it was a very interesting show. It moved from here and went down to the Design Exchange in Toronto, and that was a wonderful thing to work on. So I had a great architect. His name was Greg Colucci, still is. I think he's a principal now with Diamond in architecture. He was a young man then. They gave me the youngest one because it's nice. And what we did was we built an 8-foot cube, all enclosed with this paper that looked like it was Tyvek, but we had to peel off all the Tyvek. I'm not going to take, but it looks like rice paper in a way. But you can see the little white scratches. That's where we peeled off all the advertising that was out. So there was this illuminated 8 by 8 foot cube with a very discreet door where you entered, and when you entered, you went into a cylinder. I think there were 8 mirrors hinged together. So you went into, and it was airtight, couldn't stay in there too long, and also light sight. You lined it with rubber on the floor, rubber on the ceiling. It was a real feeling of deprivation. And that was, so you went in there, closed the door behind you, and the only light that came in there, we had, I think, 5 glyphs, which we had scratched through the back of the mirror, just 5. But the way the mirrors were constructed, there was an infinity. So you would go in there and you would be faced with endless mystery, glyphs that you could not read. And I was working with another human being who was trained as an architect, and he said, well, we're going to do something on the platonic solids. We're going to do a cube and a sphere and a thing in his mind. And I said, no, Greg. I said, this is humanity. I said, the same light that shines out of us also shines into us. And although, because of our senses, everything we touch and see is very finite, but really inside of us is an infinity. And he said to me, Irene, don't talk like that. But anyway, that is, so what I have to say to all of you, and I need to say it more often to myself, is go there, to that infinite part of you. Thank you. Sorry, I took some.
So thank you, Irene, for absolutely wonderful talk. And I now would invite everyone here to come, some who've arrived who haven't seen the exhibition, join us in the gallery space. There's some food and there's some beverages, and you'll have a chance to meet and chat with all the artists. So please have a lovely time, and thank you so much for coming.